Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again. It is Friday night. It is 7 p.m., and that means it is time for another live stream. Hope everyone has had a great week and getting ready for a very, very chilly weekend coming up. So, hope you guys have your heaters and your blankets and all those things to keep you warm with the upcoming little cold blast we're about to get. Quick programming note before we get underway. If you are watching the replay of this and you are only interested in the main topic, which will be the USS Tang, this video is divided into chapters, and you can just hover over the timeline and just click right where it says USS Tang, and that will bring you straight to that discussion. But before we get to our main topic, we do have one news item. And we have our This Week in History segment. So we're not going to waste any time. We are just going to get things going and underway here. We have one news article this week. And let me bring up a picture here. You guys should recognize that ship very well. The Queen Mary II. So Queen Mary II is in the news. The Queen Mary II completed its historic first transit through the Panama Canal this weekend. Well, it's actually last weekend, marking a major milestone in her 2026 world voyage, according to a press release from Cunard. Guests traveling on the 108-night voyage were treated to a rare moment as Queen Mary II began her passage through the canal's the canal's new set of locks on Saturday, January 24th. Following an overnight stay at the Cocoli mooring station, the ship continued her transit and passed under the Bridge of Americas on Sunday, January 25th. As the world's only ocean liner, Queen Mary II's maiden transit through the Panama Canal marks an extraordinary milestone for Cunard. Our world-famous voyages truly deliver enriching, meaningful, and unique experiences for guests, and the transit through the Panama Canal forms an iconic element of this magnificent Queen's 108-night world voyage, where guests will also visit memorable destinations like Los Angeles, Sydney, Cape Town, Hong Kong, and Singapore before returning to Southampton. Following the transit, the Queen Mary II will visit Fuerte Amador, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, Panama for an overnight stay, and Manzanillo, Mexico, before arriving to Los Angeles on February 2nd. The Queen Mary II's arrival in Southern California will mark a long-anticipated return after 17 years as she completes this remarkable leg of her world voyage. The Queen Mary II will also celebrate a reunion with her legendary namesake, the Queen Mary, for the first time in 20 years. The ship will return to Southampton on April 30th. So there you go. For the first time in 20 years, the Queen Mary and the Queen Mary II were reunited, and that happened at the beginning of this week. So, with that said, again, that is our only news topic for this week. So, we are going to go into our This Week in History, and we've got quite a bit to go through. So, let's get started. Let's see. January 26th, 1837, Michigan became the 26th state to be admitted into the Union. January 26th, 1942. Let's blow that up. The first U.S. expeditionary force to land in Europe during World War II reached Ireland. January 27th, 1880. American inventor Thomas Edison patented the incandescent lamp. Let's see. January 27th, 1943. Excuse me, January 27th, 1945. The Nazi concentration camp at Auschwitz in German-occupied Poland was liberated by the Soviet Union. Ozzy, January 28th is 40th anniversary. We're getting to that, Ozzy. January 28th, 1915. Congress created, no, excuse me, wrong one. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. January 27th, 1973. The Paris Peace Accords, formally ending the Vietnam War, were signed, providing for an exchange of prisoners and for the unilateral withdrawal of U.S. forces from South Vietnam, although fighting continued until 1975. Now, the one I was skipping ahead to, here we go. January 28th, 1915, Congress created the U.S. Coast Guard by combining the Revenue Cutter Service with the U.S. Life Saving Service. Mark Patriots. All right. And of course, where's my Gen X people? We are very familiar with this one. January 28th, 1985. On this day, or excuse me, 1986. Man, I can't read tonight. January 28th, 1986. On this day in 1986, U.S. Space Shuttle Challenger exploded 73 seconds after liftoff from Florida, killing all 7 on board, including high school teacher Krista McCauley, probably butchered that, sorry, who had been chosen as the first American civilian to travel in space. I remember I was in school when this happened, as I'm sure anyone close in age to me was probably in school as well when that happened. Yep. I have my memories of it are a bit hazy now. You know, it was a long time ago and I was knee-high to a grasshopper, but I do have some faint memories of it. Yes, she was a teacher. All right. Everyone should recognize this gentleman. January 29th, 1845. Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven was first published. Though the original publication in which it appeared in is a matter of debate, The Raven follows the unnamed narrator's slow descent into madness as he mourns his first love. Though not Poe's first work, The Raven was the first to bring him renown and recognition. Old fart, yeah. What can I say, you know? All right. January 29th, 1919. The 18th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified. When it went into effect in 1920, it imposed a federal ban on alcoholic beverages and kicked off the Prohibition era. One of the reasons why the SS Leviathan struggled with having passengers compared to her sister ships, as we all know. Instead of booking passage on Leviathan, people were booking passage on the other two vessels and other vessels at the time because of prohibition. Of course. January 30th, 1933. The Lone Ranger was introduced by George W. Trendle and Fran Stryker on radio station WXYZ in Detroit, Michigan. Lots of beer was wasted in the prohibition. Absolutely. Also, January 30th, 1933, German President Paul von Hindenburg named Adolf Hitler Chancellor of Germany, beginning the chain of events that would eventually lead to Hitler's appointment as Führer, in which he merged the presidency and the chancellorship. January 30th, 1945. One of the greatest maritime disasters in history. The German ocean liner Wilhelm Gustave was sunk by a Soviet submarine, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 9,000 people. That might be a topic for a stream at some point. And this one right here. We all know these guys. And this will be the last This Week in History for this week. January 30th, 1969. The Beatles performed together for the last time. The 42-minute set, which took place on the rooftop of Apple Corp headquarters in London, ended after neighbors filed noise complaints, leading the police to show up. Footage from the session appeared in the documentary Let It Be. And that concludes This Week in History. Well, we got a few more people joining us. Looks Eric and Anna. Welcome to the stream. Excuse me, I'm gonna take a quick drink for a sec. And we all live in a yellow submarine. Well, it's funny you mentioned submarines, Ozzy, because that is our topic for tonight, or one submarine in particular, World War II submarine. So that is the submarine we're going to be discussing. And for those of you who have been coming to the streams for a while, you know that I have mentioned this sub, the USS Tang, on several different occasions. But tonight, I am going to do my best to go a lot more deeper than just, hey, this is the ship, or excuse me, hey, this is the boat, this is what happened. Why does it look like it has windows? It definitely does not have windows. Those are open holes in the outer hull, Anna. So, yeah, I thought we would go into much more detail about the Tang and kind of fill you guys in on what happened to this submarine as to the best of my abilities. So a couple of things to start off with. USS Tang SS-306 was a Baleo-class submarine commissioned on October 15th, 1943. She was 311 feet with a beam of 27 feet, and her total crew complement was 87 people. As somebody, I believe it was Skip mentioned, the captain of the Tang was Richard O'Kane. And a couple of important things, two numbers that you really want to remember. The fact that she was 311 feet long, and she had a total crew of 87. Now, she had 5 total war patrols, the 5th obviously being her final. She sunk over 100,000 tons worth of Japanese ships, which is by far the most successful submarine, American submarine in World War II. So, the fifth and final patrol. They still make Tang. Well, this is not named after a drink, Mark. This is named after the fish, the Tang. All World War II submarines, American World War II submarines, were named after fish. So, on the night of October 24th, 1944, this would be the final voyage or mission that the Tang would go on. If you may recall, and when I mentioned this sub, she sunk herself in addition to being the most successful American sub throughout the entire war. So you got to be wondering, how did she sink herself? That's the big thing. How does a sub sink itself? Well, she could carry 24 total torpedoes, and she was struck by the very last torpedo that she fired, which, number 24, the very last torpedo she had on board, circled around, hit her near the stern, and that's what caused her to sink. So, to kind of give you an idea of what happened, this is my model of the USS Drum, which is a Gato class sub. But for this, for the purpose of this discussion, we're going to pretend this is the Tang. So, looking at the Tang like so, he fires the torpedo, it exits the sub, it breaches the surface, and then it starts curving around. It curves around and curves around and curves around and is heading back towards the ship. Or the ship, not the ship, excuse me, the boat. And they realize, O'Kane realizes this. O'Kane's up on the bridge with a few other officers, and they realize what's going to happen. So, they try to turn the boat. They hit the rudder hard over. They called for emergency speed, but it just wasn't enough. So that torp comes around and hits her right about here in this section. And the damage is catastrophic. And I'm going to bring up a little graphic here. Let me did my computer freeze? Okay, no, I thought my computer froze for a second. What caused the torpedo to come back? They don't specify why it came back. They just mentioned that it breached the surface, whereas the previous torpedoes did not. So I'm imagining it had something to do with the torpedo breaching the surface, which caused it to make that circular pattern that it did. This took all of 20 seconds for this to happen, from the time the torpedo was shot out of the boat, making the circle and hitting the ship. That happened in 20 seconds. And let's see, let's bring up another shot of her real quick. I do have a few photos, but not a whole lot. So this is Richard O'Kane right here. So you guys can put a face with the captain. So let's get to something else here. This is actually a very nice graphic. And let's see. Let me hang on. Where's my illustration? I'm trying to figure it out here. Let's see. Let's remove that. And bring this up. Sorry, folks, I'm experiencing some slight little technical difficulties. Just bear with me. Okay, here we go. So this is a nice little graphic. Actually, I believe it or not, I actually found this on Wikipedia, which was the only thing I used Wikipedia as a source for was this graphic here, because everything I've through my research, everything that we're going to go through on this graphic shows you guys a pretty good illustration of what happened. So let's zoom into the stern section. You can see this is where the torpedo hit and completely blew open this space here. So door open, bulkhead probably damaged as a result of torpedo hit. So you've got flooding from this maneuvering room, which is blown open into the aft engine room. Let's see. Yeah, and if we go up here, we can see where the top, it says immediate flooding due to the torpedo damage. This area probably completely destroyed by contact detonation of Mark 18-1 torpedo. Propulsion plant demolished. All forward motion of the boat was lost within a few seconds. After torpedo maneuvering room and after engine room flooded immediately as a result of torpedo damage. No survivors in these spaces. Now we go over here. Fuel tanks were no doubt breached to the sea, but this had little effect on trim of the vessel since they were completely filled with oil or water prior to damage. Then we go a little further. Top plating of after ballast tanks reported blown off. Number 6 of main ballast tanks probably flooded as direct result of torpedo damage. So we can see all of this section of the ship is subjected to immediate flooding, all the area that's shaded in green. So what's going to happen is what we see up here in the top part of the graphic. She goes down by the stern, and just this little section of the bow is lingering above the surface. So what's happening up front, let's go back up. So here's the bridge. 9 officers and men were on the bridge when the torpedo struck. Only 3 of them survived. O'Kane was one of them. These officers were put into the water. So they did not go down with the sub. They stayed on the surface, having to tread water. Now, another interesting one, you can see here, this is the conning tower right here. Conning tower flooded rapidly through open upper hatch as boat plunged by stern. 1 officer made free escape from flooded conning tower at about 50 foot depth. 1 man was thrown through the lower conning tower hatch to control room. Remaining 7 men drowned. But let's focus on that for that 1 officer for a minute. 1 officer, Lieutenant Lawrence Savadkin, was the man that escaped from the conning tower. Now, the conning tower, this part goes down below the surface. So here we are. This is where the conning tower is. This is 50 feet below the surface. Lieutenant Lawrence Savadkin escapes the conning tower, and he swims from 50 feet below up to the surface. Lieutenant Savadkin becomes the first American to survive an ascent from a sinking submarine without some sort of breathing apparatus. So first American in history to do that. And I believe I have a picture of Lieutenant Savadkin in here. Let's see. I believe I do. Let's see. So there's O'Kane again. And let's see. And let's see, is it showing up? No, it's not. Remove that. Add to stage, and that is him. Lieutenant Lawrence Savatkin. So that is what Lieutenant Savatkin looks like. So now I'm going to go back to our graphic. And bear with me a sec while I bring that back up. Okay, so here we are. So the explosion was violent, and people as far as the forward control room, which is up here. Let me get back to. They really need to figure out a way to make this easier to do on StreamYard. I guess I'm just going to have to stay on this. Let's do it this way. Okay, so here we are. Here we were. All right, so back up here. So forward control room, men as far as the forward control room and the torpedo room received broken limbs. The ship went down by the stern, as we saw, with the 3 aft compartments flooded. Boat was in 180 feet of water. The stern hits the seafloor first. The bow remains above the water. The men in her crowded forward as all the back compartments were flooding. Publications and important war documents. They started to burn these things, which probably was not the best idea, but they knew they had to do it. Because, well, we'll get to more of that in a second. Let's see. Publications were burned, all assembled to the forward room to escape. The escape also had to be delayed a bit because the Japanese were in the area. They knew a submarine was in the area, and they started dropping depth charges. And an electrical fire was also started in the forward battery. 13 men would escape from the forward room, and by the time the last made his exit, the heat from the fire was so intense that the paint on the bulkheads was scorching and melting and running down the walls. So eventually they had to stop burning the documents, like I mentioned. And what they were doing with the documents, Mark, smoke inhalation was a big problem with this. One of the reasons why they had to stop doing that. So where are the batteries? Normal fuel oil. I'm looking for forward battery space. So what they ended up doing was taking the remaining documents, and then instead of burning them, they would sink them or throw them into the acidic battery water where the forward batteries were, and that would be a much safer way for them to destroy all the documents that they needed to destroy. Most of the sailors just gave up by that point. A lot of them did, but not all of them. So what they ended up doing, they gathered in the forward torpedo room by the escape trunk. So here we are. You notice here's the very bow of the ship, which is still above water, by the way. And here we are. They gather here, and you can see this little section right here called an escape trunk. So here's what they had to do. They knew that the bow was still on the surface because they could hear the lapping of the waves hitting on the bow. The only way they would be able to get out was to level the boat. So what they do, they flood the ballast tanks right here, which brings the ship down to the bottom level. So, and what that also does is it lets O'Kane and the other people on the surface know that there are still people alive inside the ship, although there's really not a whole lot that they can do about it because, of the situation. So after they decide or successfully level the boat on the bottom. So here we are. You can see she's now level on the ocean floor. 4 men would go into the escape trunk at a time. Actually, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. First, we need to talk about what is called a Momsen lung, and I will type that in the chat. It's called a Momsen lung. This would be the breathing apparatus that the men would need who were going to attempt to escape the sub. So how does a Momsen lung work? Firstly, it was invented in the 1930s by Charles Momsen, hence the name. To use it, a submariner would first secure the device around their chest, engage a nose clip, and place the mouthpiece securely in their mouth. Upon breathing, the exhaled air would pass through the scrubber canister where carbon dioxide is removed, because as you exhale, you are exhaling carbon dioxide, and you cannot or should not be breathing that back in. So carbon dioxide is removed, clean air along with a fresh supply of oxygen from the tank is then inhaled back through the mouthpiece. Now, 4 men at a time, like I was going to say, would go into the escape trunk right here, because that's all that could fit in there. They had to put their Momsen lung on and flood the escape trunk until the pressure on the inside of the escape trunk was equal with the pressure on the outside. Once that pressure was equal, they would be able to open up the hatch that you see right here. Now, that presents another thing. Let's go back to the top of the graphic here. And you can see we've got a line drawing, which is going up to the surface. So what they did was, once the pressure was equal, they could open the hatch. They attached a rope to a buoy that would rise up to the surface and float. The rope had a knot in it every 10 feet. So as you would start your ascend, you would come to a stop every time you felt a knot. And remember, you can't see anything. It's completely pitch black. Think you guys have seen some of the videos I put out this week, looking out into the ocean at night, and you just see a wall of black. That's what they're seeing. There is no light whatsoever. So they start climbing the rope, and they stop at a knot, which is every 10 feet. They stop for a few seconds, take a deep breath from their Momsen lung, exhale the air, and then you go up the next 10 feet and on and on and on until you would eventually reach the surface. Trying the attempt without hanging on to the rope could cause disorientation, and the swimmer wouldn't be able to tell which way was up or down due to the darkness. And there was a situation where they believe someone got caught up between the outer hull and the pressure hull, and that person drowned because they did not grab onto the lung. They panicked. Grab onto the rope. They were in a panic. They wanted to hurry up and get out and get to the surface. And sadly, that person did not make it. There was a couple of other instances where people, not intentionally, but let go of the rope for one reason or another, got disoriented, could not get up to the surface, and drowned. There's also what we call the bends, or decompression sickness, which was one of the reasons why you have to stop every so often. So as we've talked about this before in the past, remember people who dive to Britannic. Britannic's in 400 feet of water. For people who scuba dive, when they start their ascend, they have to stop every so often So the pressure around them equalizes, so they don't get decompression sickness or the bends. Once it's equalized, you go up, and then you keep going up and up and up until you reach the surface. Going up too fast could cause decompression sickness, or again, the bends. So what is the bends? This is a definition I found from Harvard Health, because otherwise I don't think I'd be able to explain it to you guys very well. When you scuba dive with compressed air, you take in extra oxygen and nitrogen. Your body uses the oxygen, but the nitrogen is dissolved into your blood, where it remains during your dive. As you swim back towards the surface after a deep dive, the water pressure around you decreases. If the transition occurs too quickly, the nitrogen does not have time to clear from your blood. Instead, it separates out of your blood and forms bubbles in your tissue or blood. It is these nitrogen bubbles that cause decompression sickness. The condition is called the bends because the joint and bone pains can become so severe they double you over. Extreme cases of the bends can be fatal. And unfortunately, from when I remember reading the book, at least one person did come up too fast. And even though he broke the surface, drowned because he came up too fast and had the bends. So I'm going to switch to some other pictures real quick so you guys can see what a Momsen lung looks like. So let's see. Let me pull up the Momsen lung picture. Getting a little more proficient at this. So this is not a member of the Tang, by the way. This is, according to where I found the picture, this is a person in training learning how to use the Momsen lung. So you can see it's exactly what we described. You see you've got a strap here, and then here's the bag with the oxygen in it. You've got these two tubes, one inhaling, one exhaling. You can see the guy's nose is pinched. That way you are breathing through your mouth from the lung. And there was another situation where somebody, their nose clip came undone or it broke. I forget exactly which. And that person sadly did not survive either. How scary. These guys are heroes. You bet they are, Skip. Huh. So also, here's a Momsen lungs on display. And these are actually at USS Drum. Everybody knows where we can visit the USS Drum, correct? I will wait for an answer on that. Where can you go to tour the USS Drum? Who can answer that for me? I'm going to pull our graphic back up. Anyone? So, yes, Eric got it pretty close. There you go. That's the answers I was looking for. Alabama, USS Alabama, Battleship Memorial Park. If you go to visit the mighty USS Alabama, you will come across, well, you won't come across, it's there, the USS Drum. So if you ever want to see some Momsen lungs in person, go to Battleship Memorial Park, go on inside the USS Drum, and you can see the Momsen lungs. So let's zoom in here and see what they're saying about the escape trunk. About 45 men reached escape position in the forward torpedo room. 13 men left the boat via the escape trunk. Of these, 8 are known to have reached the surface, but only 5 of the 8 survived until rescued by the Japanese. Smoke and fumes from fire in the forward battery compartment entered the forward torpedo room and had serious physiological effects on the survivors. So as you can see, we had a crew. Let's see, how big was the crew again? The crew was 87. 4 people are on the surface. Everyone in the aft section of the ship perished during the torpedo hit. Those who survived and did not attempt the escape, there's no easy way to put it. The Tang became their tomb. So 13 men attempted this procedure. They put their Momsen lung on, they got in the escape trunk and climbed the rope up to the surface. 5 of them survived. So 13 attempts and 5 of them survived. 13 attempts, 8 of them reached the surface and 5 survived. So you've got 5 on the surface, and then you've got O'Kane and 2 other officers and Lieutenant Savatkin. So you've got 9 people that survived this explosion and the sinking of the Tang that are now on the surface. As it says, they were picked up by some Japanese. So a Japanese PT boat spotted them and sent out a whale boat. Well, the whale boat was actually already in the water. The Japanese were actually looking for survivors of the Tang's handiwork, if you will. Remember, the Tang was sinking multiple transport ships the night before. So the Japanese were actually looking for survivors from those boats when they came across the people from the Tang. So they have a whaleboat in the water, kind of like the whaleboats we've seen on Kidd. If you go back and find some pictures of USS Kidd, our beloved DD-661, she's got whaleboats on both sides of the ship. Something similar to that. So the rescue boat from the Japanese picks up 2 survivors, and the Japanese are kind of stunned. These guys aren't Japanese. These are Caucasian men. What are they doing out here? So they bring the guys in the boat, and they ask the guys repeatedly, and not in English, but they're asking them, are you German? They were thinking maybe there were Germans on some of the transport ships. So one of the survivors looks to the other, and he's like, they think we're Krauts. So they have to respond. They have to answer the Japanese. So the way they answer the Japanese, they went ahead and let the Japanese think that they were German. Their response was Heil Hitler. So they're trying to convince the Japanese that they are in fact German and not American. So they go to pick up more survivors. At some point, they pick up the captain, Richard O'Kane. And as they're picking him up, one of the other survivors says to O'Kane, "Good morning, Captain. Would you like a ride?" The Japanese heard that, and that clued them in. These guys aren't German. These are Americans, and they're more than likely submariners, the ones who caused all this damage. So they pick up the rest of the men. So all 9 men who survive on the surface, they eventually get onto this Japanese PT boat. And let's just say they got hit on a little bit. So some of the survivors that the Japanese did pick up off the transports kind of started circling the survivors of the Tang. Well, that kind of was just the beginning of the nightmare. Surviving the Tang, the sinking of this submarine, is just the beginning of the nightmare for these guys. So when they're on the PT boat, again, there's a few hits, and then things start getting pretty rough. The victims, the Tang's victims, start, beating the hell out of them. And I have a quote from O'Kane where O'Kane even says, when he realized that these were the people that were hitting them, O'Kane states, when we realized that our clubbings and kickings were being administered by the burned, mutilated survivors of our own handiwork, we found we could take it with less prejudice. End quote. Now, at first, they did not reveal what submarine they were on, and that didn't do them any favors either. The Japanese were not exactly treating POWs the same way that German and Japanese POWs were being treated here in the United States. In fact, it was a whole different story. So they actually told their captors that they were part of a wolf pack. They were essentially trying to lessen the blow, I guess would be a good way to put it. If they made it look like they didn't sink as many ships as they actually did, maybe it might get them a little leniency. So yeah, they told them that they were part of a wolf pack, and they were sunk by the Japanese. They said, I believe it was they said they were sunk by depth charges. If I have my notes correct on that, that part I'm not 100% sure on. So they would go through multiple transports until they would find their way to the Japanese mainland, where they would enter a POW camp, and essentially they would be tortured verbally, physically, to no end, to the nth degree at that. But at one point, O'Kane went ahead and told his men, go ahead and tell them the name of the ship, because this was another thing he was hoping that it would stop the beatings, at least temporary, because that was one of the things the Japanese really wanted to know, was what boat they were on. So eventually he relented and told them, go ahead and tell them what boat you were on. So they did. And that may not have been the best idea. It may have possibly made things worse, because later on, the Japanese would find out that the Tang was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation twice for the amount of vessels sunk. And this was released in the media. The Japanese would become aware of this. In fact, this one part in the book, if I recall it correctly, one of the Japanese officers or whatever tells O'Kane, I've got good news for you today. And I'm paraphrasing this, by the way. Army beat Navy in the football game, and the Tang was awarded this citation twice for the amount of ships that they sunk. And at that point, O'Kane was beaten unconscious for lying to them. And I could go further into some of the things that the men were subjected to, but it's very it gets a bit brutal, and I will leave that to you guys to research that on your own. If you don't do that, just remember that it was very bad. And to add on to that point, the Japanese denied the survivors prisoner of war status as outlined by the Geneva Convention, and they were not listed as prisoners of war with the Red Cross. The Japanese falsely claimed that the men were war criminals because they sunk civilian ships in addition to military vessels. So you had that on top of everything. Again, they were beaten, they were starved, all kinds of disgusting ways that they were tortured. Their health declined to the point where some of them had their hair was falling out, teeth were rotting and falling out. They were starved to the point where you could start seeing essentially their skeletons coming through their skin. They were that skinny. They had multiple illnesses and diseases. At some point, Red Cross delivered Red Cross packages to the prison. Now, it's not just the 9 Tang survivors that are in this POW camp. They're in there with other POWs as well. But anyway, Red Cross has packages for the POWs delivered. The first time they're delivered, they give them to everyone, the prisoners, but they tell them that they can't open them just yet. They make the prisoners go out, exit the rooms, and I forget the reason they exit the rooms, but by the time the prisoners get back in their room, the Red Cross supplies are gone. So they essentially were teased with them. Then sometimes they were just outright denied them, even though they knew that the Red Cross supplies were there. So with all of that, there is a silver lining in all of this. All 9 survivors of the Tang would not only survive the sinking of the Tang, but they did survive being POWs until the end of the war. There were times before the end of the war in 1945, they knew things were going against the Japanese when they started hearing nightly bombings of Japanese cities outside of their prison cells. So they knew things were going in the Allies' favor, but they did not know how much longer they were going to be there. They did not know if they were going to be executed if the Japanese lost the war. The great news is that they were not. All 9 survivors survived. And with that, we've got a few more photos to go through here. So let's see. Let's go right here. Skip, yeah, read or listened to the book. Skip, did you read that book that I recommended? I'm just curious since you're mentioning it. So this is Richard O'Kane after the war. Some speculated that he could have possibly been days or hours before death, before the POW camp was liberated. As you can see, though, he's looking pretty well here. I believe this picture was in 1946, so the following year after the end of the war. Oh, you did read the book. Excellent. So what was life like for some of them after the war? Well, it's kind of a mixed bag, what happens to the men after the war. Some of them return home, find that their wives were remarried with children from their new husbands because they thought their husbands from the Tang were lost at sea. So they remarried, but it wasn't cheating. It was by no fault of their own. Everybody presumed that everyone on the Tang had died because no one had ever survived a sub. At least that was the common thought. If someone went down in a sub, they were just gone. Some were reunited with loved ones and went on to live out their lives happily. O'Kane being one of them. He was reunited with his wife. They lived out the rest of their lives together. O'Kane would also receive a Medal of Honor, and he would achieve the rank of Rear Admiral. Rear Admiral is a title that has been mentioned on this channel a lot. Rear Admiral Isaac Campbell Kidd, the namesake for our beloved DD-661. So O'Kane gets the same title or rank as Admiral Kidd. Yes. So O'Kane passes away in 1994 at the age of 83. And he suffered, towards the end of his life, he suffered from dementia. On October 23rd, 1999, the USS O'Kane DDG 77 was commissioned. She is an Arleigh Burke class destroyer and is still in service till today. So USS O'Kane DDG 77. And I still maintain that the Arleigh Burkes are probably the most aesthetically pleasing modern destroyers or modern ships in the modern Navy. So that is the story of the USS Tang, a very condensed version. Again, as best I could give it to you guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. I will have all of my sources that I use to put this information together in the description of this stream. So if you want to go and do further research or read the book that I read, or if you want to fact check me, you have all the information right there at your fingertips if you choose to do so. Eric, I love the Arleigh Burke class. Oh yeah, the Arleigh Burkes are I love the Arleigh Burkes. Mark, you did good. I liked it. Well, thank you, Mark. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Skip, best submarine book for me is Thunder Below by Eugene B. Lucky. Okay. Interesting. I'll tell you what, Skip, I will make a note of that. Thunder Below. Is that fiction or nonfiction, Skip? Thunder Below. Ozzy says, awesome job. Well, thank you very much, Ozzy. I appreciate that. So, if anything, I hope USS Barb. Okay, so it is nonfiction then. USS Barb. Writing that down as well. Lucky was another awesome sub captain. Awesome. Very interesting information about the submarine. Yep, the submarine and its crew. Ideally, I would have loved to have gotten the author of the book that I read on here, and kind of like what Ken Stano and the guys at History X do, where they bring on an author every month. But unfortunately, I do not have access to that. So again, my telling of the Tang story as best as I could give it to you guys. I hope again that you guys enjoyed it. I hope at some point, again, you guys will go and look into it further and see for yourself. The name of the book is called Escape from the Deep, and the author is Alex Kershaw. And I will put that in the comments for you guys. There, Alex Kershaw. That is the name of the author. So you get rid of that sub. All right. So we're at 59 minutes or 58 and a half. So I think that's a good, actually, I did not intentionally intend to time it that way, but since it kind of worked itself out that way. Who is the author? The author, again, Anna, is Alex Kershaw. There it is. And the name of the book is Escape from the Deep. And it is, if you go into the description for the live stream, I've got links to all the websites that I used to gather the information and the name of the book with the name of the author in there as well. So rolling on for the next few weeks, you guys will continue to see shorts and videos from my cruise on the Carnival Valor. That's going to be the content coming out as far as shorts and videos until I've exhausted all of that content. It's all out on the channel. I have not figured out what next week's topic for the live stream will be, but I've got a week to do that. So anyway, I hope you guys, again, enjoyed this. And it's going to be a bitterly cold weekend. Go grab your hot chocolate, go grab your blankets, go cuddle up in front of the TV, crank those heaters, and have a safe, warm, and happy weekend, guys. So until the next time, thanks again for watching. And as always, you guys know the drill. Drive safely.